Hello, and welcome to Voices for Mental Health, the podcast where we engage in real talk about mental illness and share personal experiences from everyday people, mental health peers, and experts in the field. I'm your host, Candace Schoner, along with my co-host, Carrie Kerwick. Today, we will be talking with Dr. Dan Elash, who has been a business coach for the past 35 years, combining his knowledge of psychology and organizational skills to grow their businesses. Welcome, Dan, to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm not sure if you remember that we met about 25 years ago when we were both young entrepreneurs.
I do remember. Yeah.
And I remember being so impressed with you.
Well, thank you. I was impressed with you as well, and see what you've done with your time and energy. I'm impressed.
Well, thank you for that. And I know we both talked about how we got a little bit grayer.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. So I'm curious, I understand that you have your PhD in psychology from the University of Kansas with a minor in organizational change. How do you see those fields back then, and how do you see that evolved today?
Well, the idea of a systematic study of organizational change was relatively new back in the day. Now, most major corporations have a wing of MBAs majored in organizational change or management or what have you. But I had spent some time. We needed to take a minor, and so I chose organizational change, looking at how do you impact in a healthy way large organizations. I had spent a little bit of time as a community organizer in graduate school and took those lessons in bringing people together, working with people to address community problems as good training. And then over time, it has simply become more and more relevant as we are more self-aware of how organizations work, how people interact and relate to them. But I also wound up working with businesses because I found that men were more likely to hold themselves accountable when they got feedback in business than they were when they got feedback in therapy.
Ah, that's interesting.
You could always make excuses. You could always blame the missus. You could always do something as a guy. But at work, your results are your results, and it's pretty hard to argue with. And so I found I gravitated toward that. I had more men in my practice, which was unusual for a psychologist. I gravitated toward business and had the effect of learning how to manage people's efforts to work together, to produce value together, to collaborate together, all of which informs my personal coaching practice, my business practice, what have you.
We talked before actually recording about resilience.
Yes.
And I know that you have talked to many groups about this, and I think it's really important, especially right now with our mental health crisis in America and what's going on. And so I wanted to explore that topic with you on a personal level and professional level.
What I tell folks is that life happens to everybody. And when it happens, the longer we live, it doesn't matter whether you're 6 or 60 or 106, you have made mistakes, you have made bad choices, you have made choices with insufficient knowledge, insufficient data. And so we have regrets. We have things that both have happened to us, or done to us perhaps, things that we chose to do that we regret having chosen to do. The issue for me as a psychologist is, how do we move past that? How do we bounce back? Since everybody has to struggle with some of that sometime in their lives, it's important to recognize how you can prepare, how you can build your ability to be resilient, how you can bounce back. And for me, foundational, the idea that having a purpose, having a why. Why are you bouncing back? Well, on one hand, there's no place to surrender. There's no place to take a time out. Life keeps rolling. So being able to gather yourself and to react and respond to what options are left to you or what choices you have is a critical piece of being resilient. You know, I use the example a lot that a mom could be sick in her bed, miserable. She doesn't make breakfast for anybody. She doesn't get up. She doesn't start her day. She doesn't go to work. The baby cries. She gets up. She feeds. She bottles. She changes. Because the purpose, it's not what she couldn't do for herself, she could do for her child. And we see that in war fighters, people who will endure a great deal of pain in order to fulfill a mission, in order to save or rescue a battle buddy. So it's your why is really important to your ability to bounce back. And the more you're tuned in to your own expectations, then you have more likelihood of being able to bounce back. You know, there are several things that I think help enable people to bounce back, and one of them is to have is your level of self-esteem. If you think you can, if you believe in yourself, if you have the experience of having tried and succeeded before, you're more likely to try it again. And if you let your fear be your counsel and you back away from something that's frightening, the next time you face it, the fear is grown. And the more you flinch, the more you step back, the more you fade away, the bigger the fear gets. So part of being resilient is having the self-confidence, the self-esteem, not that you're perfectly going to hit a home run, but that you're not going to stay down. You're going to eke out a success, if you will. You're going to make an improvement.
Well, I like what you said about bouncing back and, you know, having that experience. If you do well, it obviously feeds you to do better yourself, and you know that you've got that experience.
So it's little daily wins that you get.
Exactly.
The big ones, but also the little daily wins that give you that little bit extra confidence, and that's kind of what happened for me as well. So I started to develop that, what we were talking about earlier, is that locus of control, of knowing that, you know, I had the power to do these things. And I think that's kind of where you were going as well.
Yeah, we all have the power. In fact, nobody is more powerful than anybody else, except in our minds, except what we expect, what we believe in ourselves. You know, I introduced the program I do on resilience with a haiku, a Japanese poem. 11 brave nights, cantering through the swirling snow, not one bends his neck. And I asked, how come? Why? Why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't somebody hunch their shoulders and tuck their chin? It's because of what they believed about themselves. It was about their identity. It's about what gave them the feeling that they were honoring their values. They were honoring their beliefs. We can all do that. And setting up daily wins, appreciating them, not only making them happen, choosing to have them happen, but being aware and having a network who reinforces that, who acknowledges that, who recognizes our growth is a really important piece to helping you build your resilience.
And we have that.
And we have that.
We have that.
This is why we do what we do.
Yes.
But for those who may not be at the same place that we are, or not, I'm not trying to be critical here, but who have faced a lot of challenges when they were younger, dysfunctional family, whatever, relationships that fed that negativity, that toxic background, how do they start to get away from those negative talks? You had another term for it, which I liked and I can't remember. But
You're talking about purging negative, toxic thoughts.
Toxic thoughts. Can you talk about that?
Well, sure. It's, you know, if you look at a little kid who's making a mistake and you say, you are so stupid. I can't believe you did that. You are ignorant. you're not good enough. Be careful. Oh, don't try that. You get lots of messages in your lifetime. Mm-hmm. You start out being born, you think you're the center of the universe. Everything revolves around you. There's no shame, there's no guilt, there's no self-consciousness. We're taught those things. We're taught them by our caretakers. We're taught them by our pastors, by our teachers, by our neighbors. By our own self-talk, we learn to diminish our value and our worth. And the more we listen to that talk, the more we pay attention to that internal dialogue that's negative when it happens, the more we reinforce it, the more we tune into that channel. We really create a channel in our brain that flows very easily in that negative, you're an idiot, I can't believe you did that, that was so stupid. That kind of talk demoralizes you. It would demoralize anyone.
Yeah.
And so learning how to separate yourself from that.
That's hard, though.
Of course it's hard.
Yeah, that's hard.
We'd all do it if it was easy, right?
Exactly.
But there are things that you can do that allow you to build your resilience. And one of them is really to begin to love yourself. And I don't mean extra ice cream or cookies.
But that too, right? That doesn't hurt.
But I'm talking more about rooting for yourself.
Yeah.
Giving yourself some grace, the benefit of the doubt, giving yourself, not expecting perfection, but appreciating progress. Doing those things really sets the stage for developing the reflex of being resilient. There are a number of preparatory things that you can do to enhance your ability to be resilient. I'm going to give you 6 of them. The first one is having a hopeful mind, cultivating a hopeful mind. Having the belief, we talked before about the slogan, she thought she could and so she did.
Yes.
Well, I worked with a woman one time who really embodied the phrase, she thought she couldn't and so she didn't. Both are true. And that has to do with the quality of your mindset, of your ability to look for a second solution, a third right answer. If there's an obstacle in the way, what's plan B, C, D, E? You don't fail until you quit. So as long as you're looking to scramble, looking to make progress, to go around or over or through the obstacle, you haven't failed. Second is really your physical health. The healthier you are, the more resilient you are to threats and danger and damage. If you are immune compromised, if you are sickly, if you don't have enough sleep, if you are overweight, you are more vulnerable. And it's not that there's magic that if you're fit and trim and sleep 8 hours a night, you're safe. But your body's more able to resist the toll that chronic stress and threat can produce. Second is financial resources. Again, money doesn't make you happy, money doesn't keep you safe, but if you have enough in a rainy day fund to get new tires when you need them, you're a whole lot less stressed than if you don't. I saw research, I guess it was during COVID, that the average American family would have a hard time putting their hands on $800 in cash in a crisis. They're more vulnerable.
Right.
So there's an old Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a shade tree is 25 years ago. The second best time is today. So build your resources. As modest, as simple as they may be, dedicate some effort to having the cushion so that when something happens, and we all know something's going to happen, you're not destitute.
So that's your plan A, plan B kind of
right.
scenario.
Yeah. The third is intellectual capital. The more you know, the more resources you have, the more options you have. Your ability to do research, your ability to investigate, your ability to learn from other people. It drives me crazy as a therapist to hear people who feel like they know everything. A PhD is a terminal degree. You're supposed to have mastered the art and science of your profession when you get one. and I haven't quit learning since. And those people who haven't learned anything since they got to graduate school, stay away from them. They need more help than you do. But no, having the ability to find information, the willingness to learn, to continue to learn, makes you more resilient. The next one really is your relational capital, your network of people. You know, a baby fawn can stand and run within 20 minutes of being born. A foal can stand and run within 30 minutes of being born. A human baby, not so much. So wired into us, biologically, genetically, is we need a family, we need a clan, a tribe, a neighborhood. We need nurturance and protection while we grow. And if our caregivers are dysfunctional, they're screwed up, they make bad choices, if they're unable to really fulfill the inherent obligations of being a parent, the child suffers. Mm-hmm. There are always consequences to that. That's why when I say everybody has baggage, none of us are born to perfect parents. So what do? We need to be resilient. We need to learn ourselves. But if you have a network, if you have a friend at your back, if you have people you care about, colleagues that are invested in you, people who validate you, who listen to you and find you valuable, you're saying to me, I found you really inspiring, or that validation is something that everyone needs. And you have the capacity to give that validation to the people in your life. Mm-hmm. Right. We often look at who's telling me I'm worthwhile. Well, who are you telling?
But also you have to have some example. So some people, especially as we know with mental health, get depressed, they isolate themselves. Mm-hmm. So, and I didn't mean to interrupt your list, because I think you were at number 5, but it just brought that up to me to say, like, you know, I always want to address that person who is isolating themselves, who doesn't have the community, to try to encourage them to find community, to speak out if they're in a situation that is causing them emotional harm.
Definitely.
Being intentional.
They say people need love the most when they deserve it the least. That includes ourselves. You know, when we feel too despondent, too despairing, too depressed to reach out, if we tell ourselves, and I've seen people at the Center of Belvedere when I'm doing programs who are alone, who are isolated, who don't feel like they make good connections, and so they don't try. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The issue is get help. If you're that fragile socially, then find a professional. Find a professional online if you need to. If you're that fragile socially, then what you can do is read, to learn, to develop your skills, to read biographies of people who have overcome and dealt with things.
I like that idea.
I use a book. There's a guy named Travis Mills, who was a soldier and out in the sandbox, who was a quadruple paraplegic. He lost both arms and both legs from an IED explosion. On the front of his book, he was standing holding his baby with 2 artificial arms and 2 artificial legs, and he decided he was miserable. He had no opportunity to live the life he expected to live. Mm-hmm. And he was depressed until he realized he had to make the life he could live livable. That was his why, his purpose. He found that sweetie, he found that family, he made that baby, you know. And the book's called As Tough as They Come, Sergeant Travis Mills. But the idea is for all of us, we can, and there's an old saying, if you want a friend, be a friend. You know, I could tell people to volunteer, I could tell people to join a book club, join a support group, but actually the opposite of lonely isn't to be surrounded by people.
No,
you can feel extremely isolated and even more alone. The opposite of lonely is connection. To be connected, to connect with others. Instead of waiting for others to connect to you, I have a young woman that I'm counseling who's like 26 years old, and she's single, and she doesn't have a particular steady date, and she's works real hard and is relatively shy and doesn't go out much. And we were laughing the other day. The number of men that pass through her living room is really limited. She's not going to find one there.
Right.
Probably not.
If she wants that relationship, she has to get out. She has to overcome her self-consciousness.
It's also tough to be vulnerable.
Sure it is.
And open up for rejection. That's tough.
And the fact that we can all we're all painfully aware of our flaws.
Yes.
You know, I was telling you ladies that I had a bad hair day today. And you could tell on camera, look at it's a mess. The final bucket of resources you can fill is spiritual, which really talks about your belief, your faith. If it's a religious faith, fine. If it's a sense of spirituality, it's fine. If it's a faith in yourself, it's fine. But what you believe dictates your options. And the more you feel that there is some sense in your universe, that there's some rules to your universe, to how things evolve, you're more likely to avail yourself of them. It gives you the motivation to bounce back, to be resilient. So those are the things you can do to strengthen yourself, to improve your ability to bounce back when those things in life happen that we all hope never happen, but that do to everyone. And so when you are comparing yourself to you and you feel like you are worth the effort, the rest of your life, it doesn't matter how bad your life has been up till now, the choices you make from today on can alter that, can make it better. And if you own that responsibility, if you own those choices, you're going to say, I used to be depressed, but I'm not anymore. I used to be insecure, but I'm not anymore. I used to be irresponsible, but now I'm not. And, you know, I tell people developing self-control, developing the power to resist temptation, to do what you need to do, is something you can build. There's two ways to build that kind of self-discipline, self-control. One, do the things you don't want to do because you know they're good for you to do. So if we make our bed, if we do our dishes, if we delay smoking, if we put an extra donut off till tomorrow morning, we build the ability to withstand an impulse, to withstand an urge, to control ourselves, our behavior, and our choices. The more you do those things, again, taking baby steps. When you feel the urge to overeat, wait 10 minutes before you take a snack. See how you feel. Delay it. The more you can delay that gratification, the more self-control you develop, the more strength you have when tempted. The other side of the coin is don't do things that you want to do because you know they're not good for you. That ability to, again, delay gratification, act on the impulse. Fantasies can be very powerful, but think about what it's like 30 minutes after you've lived out your fantasy.
Right.
What's it like tomorrow?
Do you have a question, Carrie?
Actually, I had a couple of thoughts.
Because I could see her thinking, and I was going to say.
Talk about thinking.
I could see the wheels turning.
I could see the wheels turning, and because we have like 3 minutes left, I want to get those in there.
Well, there were two things that really popped up with me when thinking about resiliency, and one was flexible thinking, being able to pivot, when presented with maybe new information or, like different situations or perspectives. So that was one, and then emotion regulation was a big one for me because that's something that I really struggle with. So that's always been on the top of my mind. Can you give us a little bit of
Sure. Well,
thought on
with
that?
the emotional regulation, there are several things. One of them is that oftentimes emotions can be triggered chemically, and they're not situational. They're not characterological. They're the fact that your biology is releasing the cortisol that makes you feel stressed. Okay? So that treating that differently than what is situational, what is a choice. I tell people all the time, your feelings aren't good or bad, they're not right or wrong. You're not bad for having them.
Right.
What's good or bad, right or wrong, is what you do about them. Do you indulge them? Do you wallow in them? Do you embrace them and hang on to them? Every feeling passes. Try to stay happy. Even if you have been terribly hurt and you cry almost nonstop, you're not still crying from that hurt in 1988. You get tired,
But
you
sometimes
quit.
I am.
You know, but there are respites, there are breaks, and the more we can let the past be in the past, the better able we are to regulate our expression of our emotions.
I find with my spirituality, I'm able to do that better now.
Good,
Because I do
yeah.
find joy in all circumstances, no matter what. And I try to find some kind of post-traumatic growth in all the things that I've experienced. So,
Sure. Well,
sorry
yeah.
for interrupting.
No, you're fine. I think that idea that we can control how we express what we feel and find ways to do it. Journaling is often a good way.
Yeah.
Having a friend, having a confidant, being able to just talk things out, say it out loud, and find out the world doesn't end. The world keeps turning. All of those things, there are ways to handle it, but I want to challenge you to take responsibility for your emotional regulation. You can't just say, well, I felt like it.
You'll never see me doing that.
But it doesn't work real well.
Yeah.
It does not, and I have to have that as the final word because we are out of time, and we'd love to have you back because I think this is a great conversation to be continued at another time. So thank you, Dr. Dan Elash, for being on Voices for Mental Health and this great, interesting conversation.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
It's been very insightful.
And to all of our listeners out there, remember, you are not alone.